Good morning, everybody. It's WTBQ. Frank along with Taylor this morning, and we have a very special guest, Taylor.
Yes, we do. We have Richard Carpenter of the Carpenters. So good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Frank. Good morning, Taylor.
Yeah.
And good morning, all.
Yes.
I'll tell you, it is great to have you on the radio. Growing up, in the 60s and 70s, the Carpenters were such a big part of pop radio for the day, and you brought a different sound into what everybody was listening to. I guess when you guys got started with A&M Records and signing with Herb Alpert, we actually saw Herb and
Just recently,
and Lonnie recently in New Jersey, still singing along, doing
Sound great.
great music together.
Yeah, I saw their show not long ago at Pepperdine.
Well, what was it like meeting up with Herb Alpert? I mean, did you obviously he had some ideas that you guys were going to really hit it off big. What did you guys think?
We certainly believed in ourselves, and we had a demo tape that pretty much sounded very much like, well, us, obviously. We'd done it in a garage recording studio of a session bassist, the reigning session bassist out here named Joe Osborne. And he had heard Karen, and we worked on a tape overdubbing our vocals with Karen at the lead. And it was shopped around for almost a couple of years to just about all the major record labels who said no. And through a circuitous route, to make a long story short, it made its way to Herb Alpert, and he heard something there. And so we signed with A&M Records in April of 1969 and re-released our first album, I believe in October, November, right around there. And our first single, which was a ballad version I had put together of Ticket to Ride. And it did okay. I mean, it was on and off the Billboard charts for 6 months. It ultimately peaked at 54, which is not bad for a debut single, new act.
That's for sure.
But a number of people at the label said, of course, they didn't believe in it, and they said, you should cut your losses now. And he said, no, I think there's something here, or there. And so we started recording some new tracks, and one of them was at Herb's suggestion. He'd had a number one hit in 1968 with This Guy's in Love with You, which was written by Burt Bacharach and Hal David.
Great song.
And it is, and a terrific record. And Herb had talked to Hal and wanted to know if he had any other songs that he thought could be a hit in his trunk, trunk songs. And Hal really liked, it was called They Long to Be Close to You at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Herb brought it to me. It was a lead sheet, and a lead sheet just has the name of the song, and it has, of course, the key, the melody, the lyric, and that's it. Some chord changes, but no arrangement. It's just the song. And Herb said, I want you to put together an arrangement of this. He said, I have a record of it. It turned out to be by Dionne Warwick, but he said, I don't want you to hear any other arrangement. I don't want anything to influence you. I just want you to keep, at the end of the first bridge, these two piano quintuplets, which I understood. And so I took it onto the A&M stage where we were set up at the time, rehearsing, and I put together the arrangement. And then we put together the record. Again, making a long story short.
One of the things that you did with the music is the overdubbing of the vocals. You guys didn't use other singers really in the background. What gave you that idea to do that?
Genius.
Where did you get that from?
Oh, well, I just figured. I knew that Karen and I, being family, and both musical, that we'd blend with each other, and. Again, in Joe Osborne's studio, he had a 4-track, but you could certainly do plenty with a 4-track. And so we stacked them. We'd sing two parts at the same time. Karen would sing the higher, I'd sing the lower. And then when we got a take we liked, we'd double it, sing the same thing. And that gave it, of course, the overdub sound. And then we went to 2 more parts that I'd put together. And then we'd do those. And so we had 4-part harmony doubled, so 8 of us. And if we had more tracks, we would have tripled it. But it gave it the sound. And, you can't beat a blend either with yourself or with family. It gives it a whole different sound than if you bring in even the best of the studio singers and the same arrangement. It would have sounded like I had put it together, but it wouldn't have been the same because it was family. And I got the idea when I was was really impressed when I was a kid with Les Paul and Mary Ford.
Oh, sure.
And, of course, Mary did all of the vocals, and they were overdubbed. Now, I didn't know that's what it was called at the time or how it was done. I was really like 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. But I knew it said Les Paul, and he was all the guitars, and Mary Ford, she was all the vocals. So I figured somehow she's able to do this, I had no idea how, but it really made quite an impact on me.
And when you did all this overdubbing and you had this all together, remember they're working with equipment that, today it's all digital. You just, you don't like something, you go and redo it. But once you got all this together, then you actually spliced certain sections of the song together, right, to create. In other words, if Karen did 10 takes and you take 1 for the first verse, you would splice take 2 in and stuff like that, right?
That's right. But she sang so well all of the time that you never had to get that many takes.
That was the purest voice in history of music.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Richard. And people always ask me who's your favorite female vocalist, and I hands down I say Karen Carpenter, and I always get that look like yeah, you're right.
You're right.
Exactly. Yeah, it always went from there. Another song that you came out with is from a gentleman we just bought tickets to see him last week. A guy by the name of Paul Williams is going to be performing locally, and he was the guy that I guess wrote the "We've Only Just Begun."
Well,
co-wrote
he wrote
that.
the lyrics.
Yeah, the lyrics. Yep.
And Roger Nichols wrote the melody. The same with "Rainy Days and Mondays" and "I Won't Last a Day Without You" and others. Yeah, Paul wrote the lyric. Roger wrote the melody, and they were signed to one of A&M's 2 publishing companies. And back then, everything was on the A&M lot. This was before A&M got bigger and bigger, and we had to expand. So publishing was on the lot, the studios were on the lot, everything was on the A&M lot, which was the old Charlie Chaplin. Then it went to CBS, and then to Herb and Jerry. But I was familiar with those 2 because there were certain records that had come out by Roger Nichols, and I noticed they'd written songs that really caught my ear. So we met them almost immediately, and they'd pitch us songs. But, of course, I heard We've Only Just Begun on the TV as it was written for an ad for the Crocker Bank.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's interesting. So it came out first for a commercial.
Yes. It was written it was a soft sell. It was a very good commercial. I think back then it could have been called Crocker Citizens. But this was, 1970. It was a soft sell. It showed a couple. It was film, and it was done in that gauzy effect, like they shoot Doris Day in. Couple getting married, rice being thrown as they're heading to the car, driving off into the sunset. And then at the end over it played We've Only Just Begun. One was a 30-second, one was a 60-second commercial. And so you've got either 1 verse or 2 verses, but no bridge. So I knew that was Paul singing. He'd stop by the sound stage when we were rehearsing, and he'd sing with us, and I knew the voice. And I thought, if that's a whole song, in other words, if it has a bridge and a 3rd verse, done with the right arrangement, I believe that song could be a hit. So I met him on the lot, and I said, We've Only Just Begun. Is that a whole song? And he said, oh, yes. So I went over to publishing, and back then, cassettes were just starting to be used as demos. Back then, it was acetates, the 10-inch discs. And so I took the disc, we've only just begun, into our road manager's office. And when I heard the bridge and the third verse and that together at the end of the bridge, I thought, oh,
was it.
This can be a hit. So I took it into the sound stage and where we were set up, and I put together the arrangement of We've Only Just Begun. And we were convinced that was a hit, and we actually didn't know whether to release that first or Close to You first.
That's a tough one.
And obviously, we went with Close to You first.
Right.
And, and then we followed it with We've Only Just Begun.
Obviously, the ultimate wedding song, used at many weddings, and including yours truly one time.
Yeah, it became the wedding song of a generation.
It did. And even beyond that, I mean, because I used to mobile DJ quite a bit, and it's a song that was used many years ago, and would go from there and do that. I read somewhere some of your favorite, you distinguish between songs and recordings, but ones that you liked of the ones that you've done actually match up with mine, because my favorite two songs are either Rainy Days and Mondays or Superstar. They both take me to a place every time I hear them. And there's no better Christmas song, and I do a countdown every year. I put yours, "Merry Christmas, Darling," at the top. But those are because it's
that.
It is Christmas to me, and when that came out, once again being a teenager, that's been the song. If I don't hear that song a ton of times, never get tired of it. It's not Christmas. So, and I hear those are some of your favorite songs too, and or recordings.
Well, they are. Superstar, of course. I mean that song was like it was written for the two of us. It wasn't, but it just seemed like it. It was perfect for Karen, and it was perfect for the harmonies, and just the opening with the oboe and then the French horns and Joe Osborne's great fills that led into the first verse and then the third. It was just some record. And Merry Christmas, Darling, that we put that out in, it was actually between We've Only Just Begun and For All We Know. We put it out in, I think, November of 1970. I'd written that song, the melody, in 1966 when I was in college.
Wow.
Our choral director, Frank Pooler, came to me. He knew I was writing these little ditties, and he said to me that he had written this song in 1946. That was the year I was born.
Oh, my gosh.
And he'd written the melody and the lyric, but he didn't like his melody. So he said, if I give you the lyric, would you have a go at putting a new melody to it? So I said, I'll give it my best. So at lunch hour, I took it into a practice room, the lyric, and, I put together the melody. And it sat around. Of course, Frank was delighted with it. And it sat around for years. But then it hit me while we were on the road in 70 that I had to put together an arrangement of this thing, and we ought to put it out as a Christmas single. So it was done very quickly because, of course, we had to wait until the tour was over, get home, and then record it from scratch, sweeten it, mix it, and all of that. So the whole thing was done in like a week.
Oh, my gosh.
And, and then it came out, and it's done very nicely for itself. And some of our recordings I get tired of, like any other record. But I've never gotten tired of that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. There's something fresh every time you hear it, and, it says the holidays when it's out there. Obviously, you've recorded all of these songs. Did you think when you were recording them that they would have this kind of staying power?
Well, back then, Frank, you didn't think of that. In fact, we found out very early on that we were a smash in England and Japan, and we'd never even thought about it. We were working to get a hit in the United States, and we didn't think about the world at the time, and I wonder how this is going to play in 40 years. You were just trying to get it done. We had the time, we had the luxury of time while we were putting together Close to You and part of We've Only Just Begun. But Close to You, of course, was an overnight smash.
Oh, that was unbelievable.
And then our lives changed immediately. So then it was always, out on the road, hopefully get enough time to get the recording done, find new songs or write new songs, so on and so forth. So we really weren't thinking about legacy or how things were going to play.
Especially in the 70s.
Oh, and you guys were young anyway, and I don't think we all think of what's going to happen.
You're immortal.
Otherwise, I guess we'd all buy life insurance at a young age, and we don't do that.
No, we don't.
It is kind of crazy. Well,
Karen was 19 and I was 22 when we signed,
right.
and 20 and 23 when Close to You came out. She was 20 years old. She sang way beyond her years.
We had seen a PBS special a couple of good months ago here in the New York area. Thought it was a great storyline on you, the Carpenters. But I know there was that earlier thing, the Karen Carpenter story that came out, which you were involved in, but you weren't happy with that one, were you?
Not at all. When I asked about that, I say the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if I'm involved with this, we're actually going to make it the way it really happened. And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
And green, and it's the worst decision I ever made.
That's it. That's the movie industry.
They take it and they want to make it sensational. How
you felt about it. I never saw the film. I said I don't want to see something that's fake.
Richard, if somebody were to want to follow up more and maybe get a great story, what would you recommend out of all that's been done about you guys?
Oh, the best was the PBS documentary.
The one we just saw.
Yeah.
Now, see, I was involved with that, and it was done right.
It was
and
beautiful.
That held up very well. That was done in late 1997 and first aired in at least here at KCET, January of 98. So that's going on 20 years ago.
Can you believe it?
And it's held up very well.
Oh, it's wonderful. We just saw it a short while ago, and I made Frank save it on the DVR because I will watch it over and over.
Not going anywhere.
No,
that's
going to
stay
anywhere.
on there. That is for sure.
Now, there was a Japanese girl we saw singing that sounded a little,
that you had worked with, the one that...
Right, the one that sounded like Karen?
Akiko Kobayashi.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Yeah.
She really did a darn good job because she's primarily a songwriter. And because she wanted it to sound like as much like the Carpenters, with all the harmonies. I said, this is going to be a lot of work. Boy, she put her nose to the grindstone, and she did a heck of a job. Our longtime, he was a great man, our entrepreneur and promoter and publisher, one of our publishers in Japan by the name of Tatsu Nagashima. And he promoted, hosted everyone from Nat King Cole through the Beatles, through the Carpenters, and more. He was just a good man. And I got a phone call one night, and it was Tots. And he said, I want to send you a CD of this songwriter/singer. And he said, I really think that you should do an album with her. She's a very big Japanese star, as they always say, and she wants you to work with her, and I think you should. So with Todd's asking me that, I felt I should, and I thought I listened to a couple of things that she'd written and sang, and I thought, she's actually darn good, considering, again, she's primarily a songwriter. So that's how that came about. She came over here, and we recorded it, in L.A., here and there, a couple different studios. And the resulting product was called City of Angels.
It's a great production if anybody ever gets a chance to hear it.
As close to Karen as you're going to get.
She really, at times, not that I ever expect, nor do I want to find anyone, but you're
there's
never
only
going to
one
find
Karen.
someone who sounds like Karen or Perry Como.
No, there's and by the way, Nat King Cole was my first crush. I just want to let you know that.
He was so
unbelievable,
unbelievably great,
incredible. We saw Natalie Cole about a year ago. She did that where they dropped the screen in the back, and she did Unforgettable. With a duet with him, and it was incredible. But his voice was velvet.
He could sing anything. You gave him any different type of material, and he could do it.
There are certain artists that do that with you. And here's an interesting story, Richard. When my father back in the day, back in 1975, through those years in the 60s and 70s, he used to run junkets. He would get his business guys he worked with, and they would fly from New Jersey out to Vegas all the time. So when I turned 21 in 1975, he said to me, you want to come out? And, it's like a 4-day thing. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, sure, I'll go with you. Summer vacation. Went out there and we landed. He goes, what would you like to see tonight? So when I came, down there, I saw the sign. I said, the Carpenters are here. I want to see the Carpenters. They're here, because we didn't have the internet or any way to know. And I said, can we go see it? So he said, let me make a few phone calls. Next thing I knew, that later that night, me and some woman that was also on the trip with him we got to sit right in the front row at the hotel and watch you guys perform on stage.
And where was this?
It was in Vegas.
75, we were still at the Riviera.
Yeah, Riviera. Yeah, that's where it was. So he got us front row. I don't know how he did it, but my father was going out there all the time, and he would bring a lot
teamster.
He brought a lot of. He was.
We know how he did.
But he brought a lot of high roller business guys out there all the time. So they didn't want to hang out with me for all the time there. And he says, "What do you guys want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd love to see the Carpenters, but front row." I actually had a camera in there and took a picture and all 9 yards. But when you think of things that you've been able to do in your lifetime, I had the privilege of seeing a Carpenters concert, and that's something that I'll take with me the rest of my life.
Oh, that means a great deal to me.
I'll tell you what else they do two have in common is cars. He is a big Mopar collector.
Mopar.
Yeah, I got a little bit of everything.
Yes, he does.
And but not a lot. I mean,
70 Challenger.
Oh, I have a 70 Challenger.
Oh,
did you really? When did you get your car?
Well, yeah, originally I have a 70 Cuda that I ordered new.
Really?
That I still have.
Oh,
really?
And this is before we took delivery of it a month before Close to You was released. So for any number of reasons, it is a very special car to me. But of course, Dad signed for it because, and he was a car nut as well. But it's loaded with options. It has 2 data plates on it. In fact, we're going to do a thing on Jay Leno's Garage with it.
I love that show.
In another couple of weeks.
Oh, that'd be great.
To your question, back then I went between Challenger Cuda, because they're both absolutely stunning.
They are.
But I finally went with the only thing it doesn't have, because it would have sent it over $5,000, which is a lot back then, was the Hemi. So it has a 440 6-pack.
But that still is a very rare car,
So very rare. And it's as new and all original except the paint, which is the original color. The Challenger, I looked for years, and we finally found one that was being restored, and then I purchased it and did every last thing on it.
Yep.
And it's a 6-pack as well. And it's plumb crazy.
Oh, you
of
got
course.
the plumb crazy.
Actually, what I did with mine, I had the 71 Torino GT that I had bought new in 71. But
they're a pretty car.
A great car.
Still
and
has it.
I have it. It's in my garage. It's my original car, and that's in the original paint and everything actually with
everything
that.
original
on that. But I went in 77, I picked up a 70 Challenger for like $1,300.
It's ridiculous.
It. Yeah, with a 383. I drove it for a couple of years, took it off the road, and then rebuilt it and would enter it in car shows. Actually, won best in show with it. Those are cars I'm never going to part with,
Never.
And it
no,
is,
and you shouldn't. And they're turned out to be a good investment.
Oh yeah.
What color is yours?
Mine, my Challenger's red with the actually it's a RTSE, so it's a special edition
core
one.
red, as they call it.
Yeah, I think it was core red. It's got the black vinyl roof. I even got the luggage rack and all the options. Air conditioning and rear defroster, you name it. So it was a really great car. And dumping money into it, I'm going, I've invested like over $6,000 into this car. Am I nuts?
No.
And now it's like, nowadays it's like, what an investment that was,
really, that was nothing.
But, so it's just things that I keep, and I wish I had more time to play with them. But that's a retirement thing.
We got 2 2013 Challengers. One is the last of the Hemi Oranges that they built.
For that style, because it mimicked the 70 Challenger.
Right. And now the new one's a 71.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I picked up
and then we just got one last week.
Yeah, I picked up the SRT8 new in 13, figuring it might be one of the last ones like that. And then I said, well, but it's not my everyday driver, so I went out and I bought a used 2013 so I could drive it around town.
That's a white one with the black stuff.
That's right.
Sure.
So
wow.
Yeah, we're big Mopar lovers.
But cars and music and everything, it all ties together,
all goes
Richard.
together.
It's kind of it's America,
Well, at the time especially, because I have about 10 years on you, not that I enjoy being this age, but it couldn't have been a better time as far as I'm concerned.
Nothing like the 70s. Nothing like the 70s.
America had just won the war.
Yeah.
We were first superpower. We were feeling our oats. The economy was cooking. And, the GIs had come home, and they brought some sports cars with them, and style started. Not that there weren't some beautiful early 30s cars, but it became the annual, the changes and what's it going to look like the next year, and these fabulous cars came out in the 50s. And the music, I like also the first half of the 50s that you don't hear anymore, because I was a kid and I listened to the radio. We were in New Haven, Connecticut, so we got WINS, WINS, 1010 on your dial.
That's
1010,
right.
it still is.
and so I listened to all the different disc jockeys and the hit parades and the top 40, but I like the stuff all the way from Mule Train through Guy Mitchell, Perry Como, Nat Cole,
sure,
all of it. And then when rock started to happen, and then just all of it. It couldn't have been a better time for me to have been born.
I agree with you.
Driving the 69 Roadrunner along with the music and the radio, it doesn't get better.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, we had a 69 Roadrunner.
She read up on that. And when the music came to this radio station, what I did here was sort of brought it from the 50s all the way up to today's music, the lighter stuff, but focusing mostly on the 70s and 60s and 80s.
Frank does a live show on Monday nights called Rock Collection. It's only 70s
Only
music.
70s music. So I sort of been doing that for years, but I think sometimes stations, especially today, they limit it to one particular genre of music. We've really expanded the library because there's so much that we love. I don't even know how many Carpenters songs I have in here, but if it charted, even if it didn't chart, there's some in there, along with a lot of all the other artists, because we get great comments from people that say, boy, you guys play a great mix of music.
Yeah, mix. And what a lot of people seem to forget is, if you think about it, when rock first started to come to the surface and all, there were all sorts of, like Hot Diggity and Heartbreak Hotel,
great song,
were number one at the same time. One was first and the other was second. I can't remember in what order. But people listened, if you look at the charts from back then, to Mitch Miller, and then it would go to Elvis Presley or Jerry Lee Lewis, and then it would go to Doris Day.
I know, it was wonderful.
It was wonderful, because if the record had it, they played it.
Exactly. Not today.
It wasn't such a pigeonholed affair as it's become.
And we always say that, boy, if I saw the Doobie Brothers walking down the street in 1973, I never would have recognized them because I didn't care what they looked like. I didn't know what they looked like. It was the music. We were listening to the music, And
that's right.
Even the kids today, we have a lot of interns that come in there. They're always into the 70s music, and their answer is, it was the last of the best music.
It was, because you got an incredible mix back then, especially in the first half.
Yeah.
All sorts of different things.
So what about your children? Are any of them musical or perform?
Well, to a degree,
yeah.
But not with the passion that Karen and I had.
Like I said, I didn't even want to talk too much about
legend.
Karen, because the passing of Karen was just such a loss for all of us, Richard. I mean, all our hearts went out to you with this when that happened. It was a surprise for us because we didn't know what was going on in the background and everything, and it just took. It was almost for us the day the music died, pretty much.
Well, and also in those days they didn't know enough about that disease. Today it may have been different.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it's such a mysterious. Very difficult to try to get to and improve. It's just you're dealing with the mind,
right?
And we don't know that much.
And then she was, both of you were so young when all this happened. It's hard to deal with it at any age, but especially, like you said, when you're 20 and 22 years old.
Yeah, and we were green, too. I mean, we were just like the kids next door.
Right.
And, of course, the rock press hated that.
Oh, I'm sure, yes, exactly.
They didn't like suburbia, and we were not street kids. We were green suburbanites. And one writer wrote that the Carpenters just didn't hit; they exploded, and that's true.
Absolutely, and rightfully so.
All of this stuff was coming at us, and it was all good mostly, of course, but it just happened so quickly, to such a degree. So we did our best.
Well, Richard, I'll tell you, you did more than your best. You left us all with
legacy here.
with great legacy of music. It's something that we just enjoy all the times. And I do my show. I say I got to get a Carpenter song on.
Yeah,
it takes you a different place. It takes us back. It takes us away.
Yeah, everybody remembers where they were when the song
when
came
the songs
out.
came out, who you were with, what car you were driving.
Right.
You name it. That's
history and
that's
memories.
what it was. I thank you very much for all you've done, and
thank
Karen.
Well, thanks, and I've really enjoyed this talk.
Oh, this was
us too.
You know your stuff, and of course, and your Chrysler people. The food.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't go
How
wrong.
good does that get?
Richard, if people would like to find out more about you and what's going on, is there a website or some way they could get in touch with you?
There's a website, and I don't keep up with it.
And it's an official one. It's
official. Of course, Carpenters turned out to be the union. They beat it. They beat me.
Oh, jeez.
So it's richardandkarencarpenter.com.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely be watching you on Jay's Garage, that's for sure.
We'll be looking for
we
that
don't miss
one.
that show anyway.
No, anytime that's on, that's a great show.
Oh, it's fun, and this is going to be, because that's quite a car.
Thank you
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Richard.
enough, Richard.
You're quite welcome.
We really
All right,
appreciate it.
you have a great day, and thanks for coming on the air with us.
Certainly.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye, Richard.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye, Richard.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye, Richard.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye, Richard.
Bye-bye.